Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Certainly want to thank you all for coming out today. But first, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of other attendees that are here today. Certainly, we have members of the Broadnax family, one of which you'll hear from shortly. It's Mr. Anthony Broadnax, but there's also a couple of other family members that are here with us today as well as several elected or appointed officials. From my right here, we have Lake County Prosecutor Bernard Carter, Lake County Assessor Latanya Spearman, the Councilman at Large Mike Brown, there's Sheriff Oscar Martinez, Lake County Sheriff, Chief Brian Evans of GPD, as well as Deputy Mayor McCain, 6th District Council person Dwight Williams, and the District Council person who represents the 5th District, Linda Barnes Caldwell. Today, of course, is a painful day in the city of Gary relative to this specific incident. But whenever things like this occur, it's certainly something that's met with a lot of discontent and unsettled feelings. But the recent event of Wallace Broadnax was especially shocking to the city. Mr. Broadnax was an upstanding member of this community and had been for a very long time, having served as a fireman as well as other notable situations in the city. The senseless, violent acts of two young people changed the life of Mr. Broadnax's family forever. It's also changed the lives and the families of the young suspects. And without question, it shook many of us to our core. But in a few moments, you'll hear from the prosecutor and possibly the sheriff about the charges associated with that. First of all, in times like these, we can't help but to feel helpless. We can choose to continue that feeling, or we can choose to do something about it. Today, myself and members of the Gary Common Council are doing the latter. Last year, my team and I actually sought a similar introduction of a piece of legislation that, in our opinion, would go a long way to deter senseless acts of violence, not only at service stations, but any places of business that have experienced violence in the past. This idea was relatively simple and straightforward. Businesses, as I said, with a recent history of violence are going to be required to have armed security, particularly in certain hours from dusk until dawn. Unfortunately, during the last occasion, and I'm certain that they had their reasons, but that particular legislation did not pass the city council. We're hoping that by bringing members of the council together and speaking with them, that this particular legislation will meet with a different fate. Under the Broadnax amendment, all gas stations will be required to have armed security guards in their businesses, as I said earlier, from dusk to dawn. Also, if a violent crime has been committed at any business within the last 24 months, the gas station will be required to have 24-hour armed security at its business. The Broadnax amendment even takes an extra step in defining what armed security guards are and violent crime. Just last month, I stood on the City Hall steps with a pastor from Illinois, Pastor Anthony Williams of the MLK Church in Chicago, and we called for President Joe Biden to sign an executive order declaring violence a public health crisis in our country. Today, I'm calling on the Gary Common Council to sign the Wallace Broadnax ordinance, or amendment rather, and to help keep our city, our citizens, and anyone who patronizes this city safe. Without further delay, we'll bring up Prosecutor Carter.